Hi everybody, it's Joyce Luck from Black Hair Compass here, and today I am coming to you guys to announce that I am going to be starting a new series called a question box, and it is exactly as it sounds. I will be accepting questions that you guys have for me, and I'll be responding to any specific situations that you just want my input on. And to go ahead and kickstart that series, I have a question here already from someone who submitted a question to me via email, and her letter reads as the following. I love what you're doing on YouTube with the DIY lock information, and I am greatly appreciative of you sharing your knowledge and your new knowledge along the way. I have admired locks since I was a teenager but never committed. I love yours. I have a question or a few and some concerns that maybe you can help me with. I've been playing around with the idea of starting locks for the past 4 to 5 years, and even with just saying that, I can kick myself knowing that if I would have just started them, how mature and long they would be at this point. Now for the questions. I want to start my locks with 2-strand twists, then have a hairstylist maintain them. So with that being said, I know you started your locks by interlocking, but did you 2-strand twist them first and then interlock? Or am I not understanding what interlocking is? Question number 2. I worry about how they will look and with me working a job once I start them. What are some styles or looks you suggest for starter locks? I work a full-time job in an office setting, then a part-time job with kids, and I am also a freelance makeup artist. Any suggestions? I know leaving them alone as much as possible is the best way, but I have to work. I want to thank you in advance for your time and reading this and responding. Again, I appreciate you. Well, thank you so much for sending me your question and starting off this series for me. But to just go back to one of the points that you noted before, you said that you've been playing around with the idea of starting locks for 4 to 5 years and you just haven't done it. I think that that's the case for a lot of people and I don't think that you were necessarily wrong in taking your time, because I don't think that locking your hair is a commitment that you should take lightly, because there's a lot that is entailed with locking your hair, and you have to not only be prepared for the physical changes your hair is gonna make, but you have to be mentally prepared as well, because it's kind of like the same mental preparation you had to go through to transition from relaxed hair to natural. You have to do it again while you're transitioning from loose natural hair to locked natural hair. So I wouldn't worry too much about having waited to start your locks. But then you asked me a question about, I know you started your locks by interlocking, but did you 2-strand twist them first and then interlock? Or am I just not understanding what interlocking is? I do think that there's a little bit of confusion there. I would suggest that you go to my video on 6 ways to start your locks, and you'll notice that as I'm going through the different ways that you can start your locks, I'll have little video tags appear at the top of the video, and those links, if you click on them, I set it up so that it'll take you to videos that actually taught me how to interlock. So I would go back and revisit that if I were you, to kind of clear up some of the confusion. But to answer your question, no, I did not 2-strand twist my hair. I interlocked all the way from the ends of my hair all the way to the roots. And then for a while, I continued just interlocking my new growth. I have since transitioned from interlocking my roots to twisting my roots. And the next thing that you asked was, I worry about how they will look with starting a job. What are some styles that you suggest for starter locks? I'm going to be totally honest with you, and I will say that I'm probably not the best resource to turn to when it comes for styling new locks or locks in general. That's just not really, no pun intended, that's not my style. I'm not really one for elaborate or even common updos or anything. It's just not really my style. But aside from it not being my preference stylistically, there are also some advantages to kind of holding back on the styling. And something that's interesting to consider is many times women with locks will experience a receding hairline while men with locks won't. And my hypothesis is that more often than not, women are more interested in styling their locks and like doing a bun and like doing half up, half down, and like trying to do different stuff with their hair, and guys for the most part just leave their hair alone. So that's something to consider, that even if you do decide to lock your hair and you do decide to get into styling your hair, just remember to not put too much tension on the roots while you're styling, because if you know the tension is inappropriate, it can cause the receding hairline. And that's another reason why I don't really do styles, which is why I'm just not very knowledgeable on them. But to move on to the next part of your question, you said, I work a full-time job in an office setting and then a part-time job with kids, and I'm also a freelance makeup artist. Any suggestions? That is a very legitimate concern for a lot of people because, as you can imagine, as I mentioned before, locks are really a test of endurance. It's unlike any other hairstyle that you'll probably get. It's a little similar to going natural, but for instance, when you decide that if you want a relaxer, you'll go to a salon and within like an instant, your hair will be straight. Your hair will be relaxed. And it's instant gratification. With locks, we're talking in terms of months and maybe even years for your hair to mature and start to look a way that you will like. So you have to kind of just mentally prepare yourself for that, because there will be some times where you won't like the way that your hair looks, and it's going to be just as much as an adjustment for you as it will be for your coworkers. So you have to kind of like mentally prepare yourself for that. But to be more specific in answering your question, it sounds like from what you're saying, you want your hair to look as neat as possible for as long as possible because you are working and you want to maintain a professional, appearance. I know that you mentioned that you wanted to start your hair with 2-strand twists, but if neatness is like a priority for you, then I would suggest that you consider starting your locks instead with braids, because with braids, the pattern that you would use to braid your hair is much tighter than it would be with 2-strand twists. So your hair is less likely to frizz. It will eventually frizz, but it will take a lot longer for those braids to frizz than it will for 2-strand twists to frizz. But there are some downsides. So that's the upside. The upside is that it's gonna stay looking neat longer, but the downside is because the pattern of the braid is so organized and tight, there is a possibility that it may take longer for your hair to lock. And that's just like a trade-off that you're gonna have to decide if that's something that you wanna do or not. You have to decide which one is your priority. Do you want your hair to lock super fast? If you do, you might wanna just go ahead with a 2-strand twist, but you will likely experience some frizzing. Or do you want your hair to look as neat as possible for as long as possible, and you're okay with sacrificing braids that turn into locks a little bit slower? If that's the case, then braids might be an option for you. I hope that answered your question and gave you a little bit of insight. For the viewers that are watching this, go ahead and leave your comments below about what you think about her situation. Are you someone who has started your locks and you went through the transitioning phases while you were working? What was your experience like, and how were some of the ways that you coped with your hair while it was transitioning into locks? And also, even if you're not someone who has locks, but what if you're someone who has decided not to get locks because you're afraid of the frizzy look too? Go ahead and comment below and expound a little bit more on what it is that's holding you back from going ahead and starting your lock journey. But anyways, thanks for tuning in, and as always, I will see you next time.